Hey everyone, it's been a busy couple of days, so I'm just now able to sit down and read the last chapters for us. So we stopped on 25. We stopped where we found out about the horse, the huntsman, and what we revealed about the magic carts and how all that works. And Horse has them at his house, and Goldie and Red are trying to find their way. So 25, a red spell. We walked for what seemed like hours, and still the woods were unfamiliar. It was an eerie silence. No creature spoke. The nymphs did not whisper their memories, and the trees felt cold and lifeless. The only thing that moved was the mist spilling over the ground like an overflowing potion. So thick my path would not have been visible even if it did appear. I pulled my hood over my head and wrapped my cloak tightly around Goldie and myself. A twig snapped. A flock of birds exploded out of the tree. "Fly! Danger!" they cried. Goldie jumped and clutched my arm. I searched for the cause of alarm. There was a movement in the mist. My first instinct was to run, and then I paused. The figure was approaching, too fast to be horsed. Its movements were graceful and agile. I let out a breath I had been holding. "It's Wolf." He bounded up next to me and knocked me over, licking my face and wagging his tail like an excited pup. I laughed. "I'm glad to see you too," I said. I picked myself up and scratched his ruff, feeling his relief, worry, and anger and excitement all mixed together. He growled, low and fierce. "Monster," he said, and for once I understood. The images of Wolf's pack flashed through my mind, disappearing one by one. I now recognized them as the wolves I had seen adorning Horse's wall. "I know," I said. "Horse is a monster, but I won't let him hurt you, I promise." Wolf touched his nose to my fingers. I felt his complete trust, and the weight of my promise pressed down heavily upon me. "Look," Goldie said, pointing at her feet. The mist had thinned enough for us to see the faint outline of a path. My path. It seemed to flicker in and out of view, threatening to disappear again, like it was having difficulty breathing. Granny had made my path with her magic. If the path was fading, that might mean Granny was too. "Let's go," I said. We walked as quickly as we could, and soon our surroundings started to look familiar. The knots in the trees, the rise of a hill, the rocks and brush, these were my woods, but I did not feel at home. When we reached Granny's cottage, it did not grow out of the trees like its usual flare and flourish. It just sat there, dark, lonesome, a hut. No tendrils of smoke rose from the chimney, no candles glowed through the windows, no pigs or chickens clustered by the fence to greet me. "It looks a little abandoned," said Goldie. "That's just because Granny's been ill," I said, my voice catching in my throat, sorry. "She's probably sleeping." Wolf growled a little. He didn't like the looks of it either. "Wait here," I said. "I'll go with you, Red," said Goldie. "You shouldn't be alone." "It's all right. Stay here. Granny isn't fond of strangers." Wolf whined some more and nipped at the edge of my cloak. "Stay," he said. "I have to go see Granny." I left them behind and approached the cottage. My heart pounded faster and louder with each step. My stomach and throat tightened into knots. Was I too late? In my quest to save Granny, had I missed the little time I had left with her? Knock, knock, knock. I tapped on the door. "Granny," I called. "It's Red." "Come in, child. It's not locked." I sighed with relief. Granny's voice was a little hoarse, but she was here. She was alive. I opened the door. The house was dim and shadowy, but the cottage was much as I had left it. Bread on the table, vials and jars on the shelves, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, though it smelled funny. The usual fragrance of herbs and spices were overpowered by the smell of smoking game. I guess this was the smell of someone who had been ill and bedridden, but for some reason it made my hair on my arms prickle. It wasn't the right smell for Granny's cottage. I looked to the bed and almost laughed. Granny was in her wolf costume. She must have been feeling better if she was in good enough spirits to play jokes. She must have known I was coming. "Oh, Granny, what big eyes you have." She said nothing. Perhaps she could not hear me, so I stepped closer and spoke a little louder. "Oh, Granny, what big ears you have." Nothing. I stepped closer, my face inches from the wolf's mouth. "Oh, Granny, what big teeth you have." Granny reached up and pulled off the wolf's head and smiled with teeth that were large indeed, too large to be Granny's, because it wasn't Granny in the bed. It was Horst. I screamed and ran, but Horst snatched me by the cloak. I twisted and yanked to get free, but his grip was like iron. I reached up and undid the clasp of my cloak, and it sent me pitching forward, but I caught myself in time and burst through the door. "Goldie, run! It's Horst! Run!" I yelled. I tripped over a tree root and tumbled to the ground. "Red!" Goldie cried, pointing behind me. Horst came slowly towards me, my cloak clutched in his fist. I tried to stand, but gasped in pain and faltered. I twisted my ankle. A cold, hard hand wrapped around my arm and lifted me off the ground. "Why aren't you afraid, little Red?" he said. "I only want to help." I struggled to free myself. I kicked him as hard as I could and screamed, and a sharp pang shot through my leg, but Horst did not let go. He didn't even wince. "What did you do to Granny?" I demanded. Horst smiled. It split across his face, sinister and grotesque. "You'll never see your Granny again. Not unless you give me the wolf." "I won't," I shouted, and yanked harder, straining my wrist. I must have a heart, Red. If they don't give me the wolf, then I'll have to find another one." Horst brandished his long knife. "Oh, I already have one in my grasp." Wolf growled and bounded out of the trees. He attacked Horst, clamping his jaws around his neck. "Wolf, no!" I shouted. Horst released me and heaved Wolf off him. There was no blood where Wolf had bitten him, only teeth and claw marks, like gauges in clay. Wolf came at Horst again, growling, biting, and clawing, but no avail. Horst's knife glinted silver as it slashed through the air. Wolf yelped and fell to the ground, and I screamed and tumbled toward him. Horst grabbed me by my hair. Goldie attacked Horst, pummeling him with her tiny fist. "Stop it! Stop it! Let her go, you mean man!" Horst gave Goldie a little shove, and she fell. "Goldie, run! Run as fast as you can!" She shook her head. "I won't leave you. You'll die." Horst pulled my hair tighter. He pressed his knife to my throat. "Better run, little girl, before you meet the same fate as your friend." Goldie kept shaking her head, tears running down her face. I knew she wouldn't leave just to save herself. She was too kind and too loyal, but it was me Horst wanted. Me and Wolf. I wouldn't allow Goldie to get hurt because of me. "Goldie, I need you to get help. Run as fast as you can. Shout as loud as you can." Goldie wiped her tears, stood up, and ran through the trees, wailing for help. I struggled once more to free myself, flinching as the cold blade ran against my skin. "It looks as though your wolf friend won't be able to run from me any longer." Wolf lay injured and helpless on the ground. He whined a little and struggled to get up, but fell back down. And I had nothing to protect him. No path, no cloak. It was just little girl, just Red. Red. The tree nymphs rushed above me, branches whispering and clicking and sprinkling memories, and I remembered my name was supposed to be powerful. It was supposed to be full of magic, like red wine, the roses and rubies. But it wasn't just my name, it was myself. I was full of magic. Granny said so. She said I was born with magic, and I heard the words now. Red, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of what? A wolf? A huntsman? Death? Or was I afraid of myself, my destiny, my own bag of magic, big and messy, and yes, sometimes made of fire and warts and roses out of the nose, but that didn't mean it was evil. It just didn't mean I couldn't be good. I'd seen magic cause so many problems, horrible curses, headaches, death, but I'd also seen the charm, delight, and heal. Inside of me there was magic. I could feel it boiling to the surface, burning like fires in river in my veins. I had to try so hard to shove it down to make it go away, but now it could not be contained. I threw myself at Horst, releasing fiery magic so strong it knocked him off his feet and sent him crashing to a tree. The tree gave a sickening crack, and Horst, he was not hurt, only surprised. His eyes widened, and I saw the faintest flicker of fear in them. And then he steered himself. He gnashed his teeth and rushed at me, roaring with beastly rage. I stood my ground in front of Wolf. My heart pounded. It seemed to echo a spell, one of all on its own. I'm fearless, I'm magic, I am Red. Horst raised his knife for one final attack to end it. He cried out, and the blade came down, 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 hurling toward me. But the knife stopped just inches from me. Horst struggled, grunted with effort as he pressed it toward me, but some force pushed him back. I could feel the power emanating from me, springing from every part of me like branches growing out of a tree, like rays shooting from the sun. He grimaced. A crack formed in his hand. He trembled, pushing harder until the crack spread up his arm and cobwebbed over his knuckles. His skin turned a sickly gray, and more cracks crawled up his neck and face. His eyes grew panicked, and fear he kept so carefully hidden flooded to the surface. He emitted a deep groan like a cave about to collapse. He dropped his knife and hand reached out towards me in desperation until fingers stiffened and crumbled like chalk. He fell to one knee and his leg was crushed beneath the weight. The muscles of his neck tightened, his eyes turned dusty, gray and hollow. Horse stretched his jaw in silent scream and his whole body became solid stone. A flurry of nymphs rushed down from the trees and swarmed with him, whispering and clicking hungrily, drinking in the old huntsman's centuries of memories. They flew around him faster and faster, building up a powerful cyclone until the stone huntsman cracked in two and disintegrated into a pile of dust. As the power ebbed from me, my limbs grew cold. The woods grew utterly still and silent. I felt I was in a place I'd never been before, the world different. Perhaps it was me who was different. Wolf whimpered beneath me, pulling me from my trance. I fell on the ground and wrapped my arms around his neck. He was bleeding, but I couldn't tell how many wounds he had or how deep they were. My cloak lay on the ground beside him, and I wrapped it around his body, pressing it into the wounds. He whimpered and placed a paw on my knee. "Monster. Gone," he said. "Yes, the monster's gone. You're safe now." I propped his head on my lap, and he seemed to relax. A wind rushed through the trees, scattering a pile of dust that had been Horse the huntsman. Not dead, just gone, erased, no more. The magic he had sought so desperately to stop death had also stopped his life. Chapter 26. The Fate of Granny. I didn't know how long Wolf and I remained alone in the woods, whether it was minutes or hours, but eventually someone came for us. "Red," came a voice. Wolf sat up, his hackles raised, his ears pricked. "It's all right. It's just Goldie." But she wasn't alone. Someone was with her, a presence that spooked Wolf. He growled low, feeling threatened. "Don't be afraid. No one will hurt you," I said. "There she is. There she's with the wolf," Goldie said. The person running behind Goldie followed. "Red?" It was a familiar voice, edged with worry. "Papa?" I recognized his tall, strong frame. He carried an axe over his shoulder. Wolf bolted upright and growled. Louder this time, and Papa came after him with the axe. "Get away from her, get!" "No," I shouted, "don't!" Wolf did not attack. He whimpered in fear and stumbled back, and Papa stomped forward, brandishing his axe. Wolf turned and limped through the trees. "Wolf, wait," I called. I stood and tried to go after him, but the pain went up my leg. I had forgotten about my ankle. I grew dizzy, and the earth seemed to tilt beneath me, and I fell. "Red!" Papa bent down and scooped me up in his arms. I pressed my head against his shoulder. "Let's get you home." "Wolf," I mumbled. "He's hurt." "The wolf can't hurt you anymore." "No," I tried to explain, but I couldn't form the words. I'd barely time to think. I was so tired. Papa carried me through the woods, away from Wolf, and followed home. The house was warm, but I felt cold inside. Papa sat in the chair by the fire, and Mama was fussing over me. "What happened?" she asked. Where are you hurt? What did all the blood come from?" Mama brought a warm, wet cloth and dabbed my face. The cloth turned dark crimson. "Wolf," I muttered. I needed to go to him, make sure he was all right. "A wolf!" Mama exclaimed. "I told you shouldn't be roaming the woods." "The huntsman," I said. "What about the huntsman? Did he kill the wolf?" "He tried to kill the wolf. He tried to kill Red too, and me too. He wanted our magic hearts." "What?" Mama looked back and forth between Goldie and me, completely befuddled. "Red, what is she talking about?" "Wolf, the huntsman," I tried to explain, but I was interrupted by a goat. "Meh." "Milk?" I said. "Boss a goat," said Papa. "I don't know why she insists on coming indoors." "She's a good guard goat," said a voice, weak and hoarse but familiar. "Saved me from a terrible monster." My breath caught. My heart stopped. The voice was like a spell. It lifted me off the chair and pulled me over to Mama and Papa's room. Milk, the guard goat, was tethered to the bedpost, and in the bed was Granny. She was thin and pale, coughing into a handkerchief, and it sounded terrible, but she was alive. Granny was alive. "Red, is that you? It's about time. I told your Mama and Papa you'd be fine, but they got in such a tizzy. Gave me a headache." My eyes blurred. A lump formed in my throat, and it grew until I couldn't breathe, and something had to give, and tears burst out of me like water from a broken dam. "Good grief, child, what's the matter with you?" "I thought you were dead." "Dead? What would you make think I was dead?" "Because you said you were dying." Well, of course I'm dying. Everybody dies. It's the most natural thing in the world. I know. I laughed a little and then cried harder. I couldn't stop. There was just so much inside of me in the end, feeling that I'd shoved down deep, wrapped up tight. Now it was bursting forth at once, and it made me dizzy. My legs gave out, and Papa picked me up and held me to his chest. Good grief, Granny repeated. Papa carried me to bed and laid me down next to Granny. Mama took off my shoes and stockings. Her ankle was swollen, she said, and the reminder brought back the throbbing pain. She wrapped cool cloths around it and tucked me beneath the blankets. Granny, I said. I'm right here, child, she said softly and placed her hand in mine. I squeezed hard. Don't die, I said. I won't if you won't, she said. Am I dying, I asked. It felt as though I could be. No, you're living. We're all living. Now close your eyes and sleep, child. I believe she put a sleeping spell on me because I closed my eyes and didn't wake for 2 whole days. I dreamt of Wolf wandering through the woods, wounded and alone. I heard him howling, high and lonesome. I needed to find him, but I couldn't open my eyes. When I finally woke, the house was quiet. Granny was sleeping beside me. It must have been early morning, the perfect opportunity for me to slip out of the house and into the woods to find Wolf. I slid out of the bed and gaped at the pain in my ankle. The swelling had gone down, but it was still tender. I hobbled toward the door. Meh, bleated Milk. She was chewing on some grass at the foot of the bed. Hush, I said. Do you want to wake the whole house? Meh, Milk repeated, and Mama came rushing. Tattletale, I said. Red, what are you doing? She took me by the arm and led me back to bed. You're not fit to walk. I have to find Wolf. He needs help. What are you talking about? Are you fevered? She felt my forehead. I was not fevered. The more I tried to explain about Wolf and his needing help, the more Mama thought I was idle and needed more rest. A wolf has other wolves to take care of him, but you're human, and humans need rest. Mama kept me in bed for a full week. And whenever I tried to escape, Milk, the guard goat, ratted me out. Goldie tried to visit every day and sometimes twice a day, but Mama would not allow her in until I was fully rested and my ankle was healed. When she was satisfied with my recovery, Mama allowed a short visit. Goldie marched in carrying a clay pot. She held one out to me, beaming, and noticed that she had several red welts on her face and arms. Guess what? She shoved the pot in my lap and I opened it. It was honey. I can charm bees now, she said, and scratched at the welts on her cheek. Almost. A few didn't take to my charming so much, but the others didn't mind. Because guess what? I found something even better than honey. Mummy. My mummy came to find me, and I must have found some kind of magic because she loves me, Red. She says she loves me more than anything in the entire world, and I should never run away again. That's wonderful, I said. And guess what? Mummy says we can stay on the mountain, and if I can find enough honey hives, I found 5, and not including yours. You still need to put your name on that, though. We're going to sell honey so I can stay here and be your best friend in the whole world forever as long as you live. So live a long time, okay? She wrapped her arms around my neck, and I got a mouthful of curls, which made me sneeze. All right, Goldie girl, said Granny. Back away before you smother my grandchild with that hair of yours. Goldie released me from her chokehold, but leaned over and whispered. Granny's a little scary, she said. I know, she's a witch after all. I heard that, said Granny. Now shoo, I want to talk to my grandchild alone. Goldie scurried out of the room, but then popped her head back in and said, I'm glad you didn't die. The room was still and quiet after Goldie left. Granny hadn't spoken since I'd been there. She slept a lot and then was awake. It seemed as though every movement and every word took a great deal of energy. So she said and did only the things that really mattered. It seemed a wise way to live in any case. You went on quite an adventure, she said. I met a dwarf, I said. At last. Was he terribly grumpy? Worse than you in the morning, said Granny. Did you catch him by the beard? I did. His name is Borland, and wouldn't you know it, he's the same dwarf you took by the beard all those years ago. You don't say. I nodded again. 276 years old. Did you know that dwarfs can live for 1,000 years? I didn't, said Granny. And do you know that what they do with the gems that they find? They eat them. Eat them? Granny seemed genuinely shocked, which was rare as rubies. Maybe that's why they were so grouchy. He was a nasty little brute, that dwarf. Perhaps he wouldn't have been so nasty if you hadn't stolen all of his gems. I didn't steal anything, Granny said. The little vagabond stole them from the prince. I shook my head. The prince stole them from Borland. He was only getting them back. Granny's cheeks turned rosy. Well, how was I supposed to know? He was a perfect little beast to me. Speaking of beasts, Borland showed me the red roses, ones that make you live forever. they were made by a powerful enchantress. Oh? Granny shifted uncomfortably. Granny, why did you turn Beauty into a beast? Granny scoffed. I did nothing of a kind. She turned herself into a beast. She was a foolish brat. That she's different now, I said. Can't you change her back? If she's really different, then she'll be able to change herself back, but she won't live forever if she becomes human. That's better than living as a beast forever, I suppose. You suppose? I nodded. Well, that's a relief. I was afraid you were trying to turn me into a beast to keep me from dying. I nearly did, I said. I almost brought you wine from that would make you young again. That sounds lovely. Why didn't you? Would the vine turn me into a troll? I shook my head. The wine would have made you young, but it also would have taken away all your memories. I told her about the well witch. Well, maybe that would have been worth it. I should love to be young again. Even if you forgot me, I asked. Maybe just for a day or two, she teased. I was beautiful when I was young. Just gorgeous. Everybody said so, I finished for her. Granny smiled. You see, I'll always be here, Red. How? I said with a trembling voice. I thought I had dried all my tears, but I found buckets more welling up in me. I never knew my own grandmother, she said. When my mother died long ago, I feel them both with me all the time because I came from them. They're part of me, and they are a part of you, and so we'll all keep living through each other. No one really goes away for good. I rubbed the edge of my cloak. It had been draped over my shoulders like a blanket. In the woods, my path kept fading in and out. I thought it meant that I had lost you and that it was like losing a part of myself. Granny seemed confused. Why would my dying have to do with your path fading? Because you made it. If you were gone, wouldn't the path go too? Silly girl, I never made that path. You did. You made it yourself when you weren't more than 3 years old. Don't you remember? That couldn't be right. You made it for me after the bear attacked me. I remember wanting it so badly to go see you, but I didn't want bears to get me. You told me they wouldn't if I wasn't afraid, and I said I wouldn't be afraid if it had something to protect me, and that's when my path appeared. Because you wanted it to, said Granny. You made the path with your own magic, and it was some of the most wonderful magic I had ever seen. I tried to take it in what Granny was saying. The path was mine. I made it with my own magic, and it wasn't dangerous or awful. It guided, it protected, it was good. Then why did it disappear? Why? I didn't want it to. Why did the princess want to live forever? And Horace, why did he so desperately need to keep living? Because they didn't want to die. I didn't see what this had to do with my path. But why? I thought for a moment. Why had I wanted to save Granny? Why would anyone try to stop death? I could think of dozens of reasons. They were afraid, I said. Granny nodded. The well witch, the huntsman, the beast, all sought magic that would make them live. But the magic was always born of fear. Nothing twists magic as much as fear, Red. And so my path disappeared because I was afraid? Magic does not cause trouble, Red. Fear is what makes the trouble. Why do you think I'm always telling you not to be afraid? I was afraid, I said, but I'm not anymore. I took my cloak and wrapped it around my shoulders. I'm Red, strong and fearless, and a little bit grumpy, said Granny. Just like you, I said. Like me, Granny smiled, but there was something sadness in it. And will you be afraid when I die? Because I will, Red, someday, maybe soon even. I took a deep breath. I'll probably cry and maybe feel a little angry, a little, or a lot. I should hope so. I'd be insulted if you didn't at least break a dish or two. Or set something on fire, I said. That's my girl. I'll miss you every day, but I won't be afraid. Granny smiled, and I thought I saw a small glisten in her eyes. When you are missing me most, then you must grow something, roses. I want you to grow me a whole forest of roses in my memory, so you better start practicing. She took a pot of dirt from the bedside and set it in my lap. I'd like you to grow me a rose now, a red one. Booger blossoms are my favorite. I laughed a little and took the pot. It sat heavily in my lap. I was still weak and tired from all that had happened. Even so, I could feel that familiar pulse of energy nestled in my belly. I settled my hands over the pot, and I let the magic rise in my fingertips and pour into the soil. Nothing happened at first, but I waited patiently until a small shoot sprouted from the soil and rose up and up and up. It thickened to a hardy stem and grew thorns and leaves, and finally a bud at the top swelled and split, revealing deep red petals, that opened and curled into a perfect rose. Granny sighed. Oh, well, I would have preferred booger blossoms, but this will do. I gaped at the rose. I had grown with my own magic. Nothing had caught fire. Nothing had been broken or exploded. It was a perfect red rose. Granny leaned over and kissed my forehead, and a single tear spilled on my face and ran down my cheek. Rest, child. I'll be here when you wake. I closed my eyes and held tight to Granny, feeling her heart beat with mine, 2 hearts alive and full of magic. And this last part's called the epilogue. On and on and on. In autumn, I walked through the woods on my path. It was strong as ever, clear, true, and never flickering because I wasn't afraid. I was strong. I was magic. I was red. I climbed up the mountain and stood on the highest peak. Across from me was a rocky ledge and a cave that served as a den to a newly formed wolf pack. Wolf had not come to me since that day in the woods. At first, I called and searched for him. I worried something had happened. What if another huntsman caught him or had gotten into a fight with the beast of the woods? But then I heard him howling. Come, he called, and my heart thrilled at the sound, an invitation, until I realized it was not for me. Another wolf howled in response, and their voices twining together in a lovely song. Come. I could see Wolf now, just outside this den, and another wolf by his side, a gray female with white markings on her chest and paws, and behind them were 3 pups, fluffy and playful, 2 gray and 1 black, with just a tuft of white on his chest. Wolf had found a mate, and now he had a new pack. I was happy for him, but I could not repress the ache in my heart, the feeling that I lost a friend. That was okay, though. Granny says it's good to feel sadness in times of loss, because it means we have loved. It means we're truly alive. Wolf stared back at me across the cliffs, and I still felt the thread of connection between us, pulsing and tugging so slightly. The bond we shared would never go away, but he didn't need me anymore. He wasn't my pet. I was not his keeper. He was wild and powerful, and he would run with other wolves now, just as I would run with other humans. Red! I could hear Goldie calling for me from below. I couldn't believe she followed me all the way up here. Red, come down. I have a surprise for you. I looked at the wolf pack one last time. Wolf dipped his head, acknowledging me, and then turned his attention to his pack. He picked one of the cubs by the scruff while the others pounced on his back. I climbed down the top of the mountain to Goldie. What is it? I said. Come on, wait till you see. She took off in a run, and I ran after her. Her curls bounced wildly, and my red cloak billowed out behind me like wings. We danced through the woods. We leapt over rocks and fallen trees, hurtled down the hillside to the stream where we first met Borland, and then splashed through the water. We ran and ran until I nearly was out of breath, and finally Goldie slowed. Shh, listen. I heard a familiar hum. Bees darted around me, resting on my cloak, multiplying as we walked toward an old tree, swarming with bees. Goldie, you found another honey hive, and this one isn't owned by a bear, she said. I walked to the hive and dipped my hand inside and pulled out a good chunk of honeycomb, dripping with golden honey. Goldie licked her lips. I think I see how it's done now. Let me try. She tried to approach the hive, but the bees began to sting her. Ouch, vicious little beast, she cried, and she swatted them away. Some things never change. Speaking of beasts, I've been thinking about the beast in the enchanted castle. I wanted to go back and see if she was still a beast or if she was Beauty again, and I wanted to see the dwarfs again, too. I wondered if Borland would be just as grumpy as before, if he might be happy to see me this time. Maybe he would take me someplace new and exciting without any beard holding required. Someday I will do all that, but for now I was happy to stay on the mountain. Who knew how much time Granny had left, and Goldie needed me. I needed her, too. She was one of my dearest friends in the whole world. Along with Rump and Granny, too. I'd found I couldn't have too many friends, and that saying goodbye to one didn't mean I couldn't say hello to another. Let's go home, I said. My path unfurled beneath me. Goldie stepped onto the path, too, and put her arm through mine. Red, when I'm old and you're older and it's time for us to die, let's die on the same day, okay? Let's not think about that. Let's live every day together for a long time, shall we? I said. Oh, yes, that sounds glorious. I'll let you have as much honey as you want every day for our whole lives. I'll get the honey out of the hive for you. I took her hand as Goldie had once said, red and gold have always gone well together. A wind rushed in and the tree nymphs swirled and whispered. I understood them now, ever since that day when I had to let go of my fear. Fear doesn't only twist our magic, but also makes us forget. It made me forget who I was, the strength and the goodness I had inside. But when I let go of the fear and faced what was before me, the memories came rushing back like voices carried on the fingers of the wind. I saw myself in Granny's arms, my first breaths of life and my naming. I watched my first steps in the woods where the trees towered like friendly giants and spoke animals of simple wisdom. They whispered Granny's spells and charms and potions, all of her magic that would one day become mine. I wouldn't waste a single second of life, not mine or Granny's or anyone's. I'd learn all I could, all about Granny's magic, her mistakes, and her enormous love. I'd grow things. I could not set them on fire. I tried not to set them on fire. I'd taken all that Granny that I could, all the magic and stories and laughter, all the roses of her and the red. That way, when she did die, I'd still have everything she was inside of me. She'd stay alive in me, and after I was gone, I'd stay alive through others, and we'd really never go away. We'd just grow together like a forest, like the world, changing seasons and living on and on and on. The end. And that's the end of that. I hope you enjoyed it.